Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Smsl Pl200 CD Player. And this was loaned to me by APOS Audio for review, and it currently sells through APOS for $669.99. That is in US dollars, and there will be a link to APOS in the notes below this video. This is a CD transport, a CD player. It's a USB DAC, and it is a Bluetooth receiver. It has 3 digital inputs that would be, besides the CD player, I mean, that's counting as the first. It plays CDs, but it's also, like I said, a Bluetooth receiver, and it does function as a USB DAC. It has 2 digital outputs, so you can use this as a CD transport, and that would be coax and optical. And it has 3 analog outputs. That would be RCA single-ended on the rear, XLR balanced on the rear, and 6.3 millimeter headphone, because this is actually a headphone amp all in one. So this is a pretty much do everything unit: CD player, USB DAC, Bluetooth receiver, and it even has preamp function. So this thing pretty much does everything. It has 8 digital filters that you can choose from. 6 of those are PCM filters and 2 are DSD filters. The headphone amp that's built into this has 2 gain settings. And like I mentioned a minute ago, this does have a preamp function, so you can go into the menu and set both of the analog outputs, either RCA single-ended or XLR balanced, to either fixed, to use this like a standalone DAC or as a transport, or to volume controlled, where you can use the volume knob on the front of this or the volume on the remote to use this as a preamp, where you can run this directly to, like a speaker amp or something like that. This unit has 4 sound color modes, and basically what they do is just basically change the tone balance a little bit. Not a huge amount, but I do hear the difference, and it changes it from kind of a basically neutral tone balance to one of them sounds a little more, a little V-shaped, a little emphasis in the treble, a little in the bass. There is a bit of a difference. And I just wanted to remind you that those can only be used when using this as a CD player or when using the built-in headphone amp. If you are using this as a CD transport into another DAC, then neither the digital filters apply or the color modes of the sound. This has settings that you can access through the remote control or the volume control in the front, and I'll show you in a minute. I'll give you a close-up of that. You can set a time dimmer on this where I think it's anywhere from 5 seconds to 60 seconds after you last touch the controls. The display on this will dim completely. And like I said, you can set that from anywhere from like 5 seconds to 60 seconds, or you can just shut that off where the display stays on all the time. And then it also has 6 brightness levels to the display. This unit also has an MQA decoder, so you can use this to decode MQA files that you either bring into this through the USB input, or it will actually play MQA CDs. So I personally don't have any MQA CDs, but it will not only play them, but it will actually decode the MQA, not just an enabler, but a decoder. This unit uses the AKM AK 4499 EX chip, and I believe that's the top of the line AKM chip. I'm not positive if it still is. It's been about 6 months since I did the first impressions on this video. I apologize. It's just been a long, busy summer. I do have to still work a full-time job. The $80 or so per month I make from YouTube does not pay the bills. So unfortunately, I work full-time and I do reviews part-time. This, according to SMSL, they claim a total harmonic distortion on this unit of 0.000068%, which is, I mean, just nothing. It's so far beyond the threshold of hearing that it doesn't even apply. According to SMSL, this has a dynamic range of 132 decibels from the balanced outputs and a signal to noise ratio of 132 decibels from the balanced output. The headphone amp that's built into this unit has an output of 1000 milliwatts or 1 watt into 32 ohms. And this unit is about 8 inches wide, about 8 inches deep, including the offsets, the knob, and the connections on the back, about 1.75 inches tall, and it weighs in at just under 4 pounds. This unit does come with a remote that does just about everything. I think every function that this has, you can do with the remote. You can get into the menu, you can go through all the digital filters, you can access tracks on a CD directly with the number pad here. You can dim the display, you can switch inputs, you can switch outputs. You can do just about, I think, everything with this remote. So it's just plastic, it's nothing fancy, but it does get you through all the functions. Okay, I want to give you a closer up look at this. And as you can see, the first thing you'll notice is this has a solid aluminum chassis. This chassis was milled out of one solid piece of aluminum. And on the bottom plate removes, so, to access the inside of this, but basically this was machined out of one piece of solid aluminum, which is really impressive, for a unit like this. I've never seen a CD player that was the case. The lid on the cover for the CDs, as you can see, this is the access to CDs is on the top. You've got your pretty heavy aluminum cover here. Then you've got your magnet here that holds the CD down and centered. And then, as you can see, the CD mounts in here. I'll pull it out, give you a look inside the unit. And I did want to mention that, almost dropped that, that being a top load CD player, something you got to keep in mind is this is going to have to be at the top of your stack, because you can't put anything on top of it and then access the CDs. So it will have to be at the top, and also you're not going to want to have it real high up on a shelf where you can't see what you're doing. So you're going to want to have this on the top, probably a desk level up to about eye level, somewhere in that range, to be able to access the top. Okay, on the front here, you've got piano key type controls for your play, stop, pause, to skip to the next track, all that stuff. You've got your button here, your knob, which is multifunction. First of all, you can turn it on and off with this. You hold it in for a couple seconds, the unit turns on, hold it off, or hold it in for a couple seconds, the unit turns off. Basically, your on-off switch. Your volume control, if you're using this as a preamp, or if you're using it with the built-in headphone amp. You control your volume here, and then you can't see it here, but in the thumbnail for the video, you should be able to see that it has a really nice display on it with really bright, clear numbers and all that. Lets you know your track, your inputs, your outputs, all that stuff. So pretty nice. On the back, you've got your headphone jack here. It is a single-ended 6.3 millimeter headphone jack, and then you've got your analog outputs, your balanced XLR, your single-ended RCA. Then you've got your two digital outputs here, your coax and optical, to use this as a CD transport. And then you've also got your USB connection here to use this as a USB DAC, and that is a USB-C connection. And then you've got your 120 volt AC input here. I did want to mention that it's not really what I would call an inconvenience, but having two covers here, you've got your separate cover, then you've got your little disc here with the magnet to hold your CD. I mean, it is sort of a hassle to change CDs, but it's not a really big problem. And while I'm talking about that, I wanted to mention, because I've seen a few videos about this that have said that there's no way to play the CD without this second cover on it. And there is actually a way to do it. If you read in the manual for this, if you take the play button here and you hold it down, you got to long hold it for a couple seconds, it will override and it will actually play the CD without this cover on. So you can do it that way. You don't have to put the cover on, but being on top, there's a good chance of getting dust in this. So I personally keep the cover on it all the time, even when I'm playing CDs. So before I get into the sound of this, I wanted to mention the equipment I used with this. And no, well, actually, before I even get to that, I wanted to mention that I reviewed this in 3 different ways. I reviewed it as a CD player, using this to play CDs, using its own built-in internal DAC, running into a separate headphone amp. Then I also reviewed this as a CD transport, and that's what I use this as the most. I would run a digital output out of this, either coax or optical, into an external DAC, and then from that DAC to a headphone amp, and that's probably the way I use this unit the most. And then I also use this as a CD player powering, or as my source to the built-in headphone amp, and I'll briefly discuss each of those and how I thought this unit performed. So when I did use this as a transport, I mostly used 2 different external DACs. One would be the Hi-Fi Man Serenade, which is actually a combination DAC amp that can be used as a standalone DAC, and then also the iFi Audio IDSD Neo 2, which is also a combination headphone amp and DAC that can be used as a standalone DAC into another amp. And then when I use this, when I tried the headphone amp that's built into this, I primarily used 3 different headphones: the Hi-Fi Man Ananda Nano, the Hi-Fi Man Aria Organic, and the Hi-Fi Man HE1000 SE. And then when I was using this as a transport into an external DAC and another amp, I used pretty much every headphone I have, but lately, more than any other headphone, I've probably been using the Hi-Fi Man Susvara, just because it's so revealing of everything in the chain up to the headphone. It's so revealing of the detail that's coming out of your DAC, out of your amp, everything. It's just a great headphone for doing reviews. But I did try this with a lot of different headphones. Okay, to start with, I'll talk about this as a CD player. And using this as a CD player, I used the balanced outputs of this, the XLR, and ran them into the Hi-Fi Man Prelude headphone amp that's made by Golden Wave for Hi-Fi Man. I think Hi-Fi Man owns that now, I'm not sure, but anyway, that's a $2,500 headphone amp, one of the best headphone amps I've ever heard. And as a CD player, using the internal DAC into the Hi-Fi Man Prelude and using the Hi-Fi Man Sespara, I was very impressed by this as a CD player. I believe that the built-in DAC is of excellent quality. It's extremely clean and clear and detailed, has a large soundstage with good width, good depth, excellent separation. This has a really good DAC in it. Probably the best DAC that I've heard in a CD player up to this point. I mean, this DAC is up there with, really good standalone DACs. The functions of this are just pretty much normal, except for this does have a ton of features, a lot more than any other CD player I've ever used before. I've never experienced a CD player that had the digital filters, the different colors of sound, modes, all the features of this. And I'll be honest, at first, the menu on this was a little overwhelming. It seemed a little overly complicated for a CD player, but that's just because you have so many options to work from. And once I'd used it for a while, I did get used to it and adjusted, and it didn't seem that complicated anymore. But at first, like I said, it was just a lot. It's just most CD players don't have all these different functions. So, but sound-wise, I was very impressed by the sound of it using its own internal DAC as a CD player. Okay, as a CD player and headphone amp, using its own headphone amp. Okay, I'll tell you right now, the headphone amp in this is 1,000 milliwatts. That's plenty of power for even easy to medium, hard to drive planar magnetic headphones. I mentioned that I use this with the Hi-Fi Man, the Nano, the Organic, and the 1000 SE, and this has plenty of power for those. And the headphone amp in this was very impressive. It's a very decent headphone amp, as long as you're not trying to drive a headphone that needs an extreme amount of power. It does not have enough power to adequately drive the Hi-Fi Man Sespara or the HE6 SE version 2. It will play them to respectable volume levels, but it doesn't give them the weight to the bass and the bass control that a more powerful amp is going to give it. So the headphone amp on this has very good sound, but don't try to drive really hard to drive headphones with it. But most headphones, it's going to have plenty of power, and it is very decent. It's a very respectable headphone amp. I mean, it's not on the level of more expensive standalone headphone amps, like using this as a transport into something like the iFi IDSD Neo 2, the DAC and built-in amp in that unit did improve the sound, or using this into the Hi-Fi Man Serenade combination DAC amp, I thought it did sound better than using the internal headphone amp of this. But those are both amp DAC combinations that are $900 and $1,000 respectively. So anyway, but like I said, very decent headphone amp, as long as you don't try to drive something that needs an extreme amount of power. But even with the Hi-Fi Man HE1000 SE, which is an endgame headphone, I mean, it is definitely a high-end headphone. I heard nothing wrong with the built-in DAC or the built-in amp in this unit. Okay, And then as a transport, I use this into several different DACs, but primarily the Serenade and the Neo 2. And this did an excellent job as a transport and has been my primary CD player for the last like 6 months that I've had this. I need to get this packed up and shipped back. Hey, Post is probably wondering why it took me so long, but once again, I work full time, so I do the best I can getting these videos out. But very happy with it as a transport, and have used this pretty much nonstop for the last 6 months, so I've got a lot of time on it. I did want to mention that the digital filters on this, and once again, the digital filters only come into play when you're using this as a CD player or using the internal headphone amp. If you use this as a transport, then you're bypassing the DAC in this, and you won't have an option of digital filters or the sound color modes. But the digital filters, I did try the 6 PCM filters, and I do hear a difference, which topping DACs, if you've watched any of my videos of topping DACs, I don't hear any significant difference in the filters. I think the roll-off point is just too high up in the frequency range for my old ears to hear. I think topping, according to their graph, it looks like the digital filters don't change anything until you get to about 18,000 hertz, and I know I can't hear that high anymore. But this amp, I do hear a difference, and basically the difference I'm hearing is some of the digital filters, the treble rolls off a little sooner than others. So, you know, if you've got a headphone that's a little hot in the treble, you can mess with the digital filters and maybe, you know, roll the treble off a little bit. Or if you've got a headphone that's a little dark in the treble, you can use a filter that's going to give it a little more brightness to the treble. The sound color modes, like I said, it's kind of like a built-in, they're like EQ settings. You can't actually adjust the EQ, but you can change the frequency spectrum a little going through the sound color modes, and there is a pretty significant difference. Okay, I did want to compare this. The only other CD player I really have to compare this to is my Cambridge Audio 540C, and that's about a 12-year-old CD player that I've been using for a long, long time doing reviews. I primarily use it as a transport, and comparing this as a transport to the Cambridge Audio 540C, I really don't hear a difference, okay? I know some people believe that the transport doesn't make any difference, one transport to another, as long as they're both reading the CD correctly, there should be no difference in the sound from one transport to another. Okay, other people disagree with that and feel like a transport can induce jitter and different elements to the sound and affect the sound, but my belief is that the new modern DACs are so good at removing jitter and timing errors that the transport is, once again, as long as it's reading the CD correctly, is not going to make a lot of difference. So as a transport, I don't hear any significant difference between this and my Cambridge Audio. As a CD player, I do hear a difference, and I think that is mostly the built-in DAC and maybe the analog output stage. But as a CD player, I would say that this is a little cleaner, a little more detailed, a little more sharper focused than the Cambridge Audio. But the Cambridge Audio, and I believe that uses a Wolfson DAC chip, and like I said, that's about 12 years old. The Cambridge Audio is a little warmer, a little bit of a richer sound than this. So it's kind of a trade-off, whichever one you want. They're both very decent CD players, but this one, I would say, is a little bit towards, more towards the analytical level, where if you're looking for the last bit of detail, this is going to give it to you a little better than the Cambridge audio. Okay, I did want to mention that this will read your own homemade CDs that you rip from, like your computer or whatever. It will read rewrites, whatever. It doesn't have a problem with that. And in fact, I rip a lot of CDs to my computer and then sometimes burn them back onto disk. And I usually do that in WAV format, and this has no problem with the rewrite CDs or the WAV format. The only issue it does have, it's a little bit slow about reading those. A normal store-bought CD, the read, when you put the CD in and it reads it before it gets ready to play, usually about 10 seconds, a little bit on the slow side, definitely slower than some other players, but not bad. But some of the rewrite CDs in the WAV format, it's taken maybe 20, 30 seconds to read it, so there is a little bit of a delay there. What else? I did mention that the remote covers just about every function of this. Okay, I did have one issue with the CD player. And I'm going to tell you right now, I really like this as a CD player, as a transport, even as a CD player with a built-in headphone amp. But I did have one issue, and this is going to kind of contradict what I said in my first impressions video. Okay, in my first impressions video, I had this maybe a week, and I tried maybe a half a dozen CDs, and I made the statement that it seems to have no problem reading CDs, that, even if a CD wasn't perfect, it seemed to be okay. Well, as time went on, and I tried more and more CDs with this, and I have probably about 500 CDs, and some of my CDs are all the way back to the late 80s. I started buying CDs in 1986, and if a CD is new and in really good, perfect condition, there is absolutely no problem. This will read it. There won't be any glitches, any skips, any jumps, anything like that. But I have had problems with less than perfect CDs with this. In fact, I would say probably half of my CD collection, I've had some sort of problems. I might play the whole CD except for one place. It'll skip or jump or something like that. Or I might put a CD in and there might be some tracks that it won't play at all. And in fact, I've had a few CDs that I've put in it, and I'll admit they were in sort of rough condition. These are CDs that I've had since the 80s. They got played in my car for years. I mean, they've got some minor scratches on them, but this wouldn't play them at all. When I've got a couple of Sony DVD players, a couple of old, like 20-year-old Sony DVD players that I use as CD transports, and both of those will play every CD I have. Every track, every song, will not skip a beat anywhere. So the CDs are playable, and there's some CDs I have that this won't even play. Okay, I considered the fact that the lens is exposed on this on the top when you open this. So I did attempt cleaning it. In fact, I've done that like 3 times. And I used the old standard of a Q-tip with some 91% isopropyl alcohol. And the first time I did clean it, it did make a difference. So it obviously was dirty. And as far as I know, I received this unit pre-reviewed. This didn't appear to be new in the box. I think it was either an open box item or had come from another reviewer. Anyway, it had fingerprints on it. It wasn't the cleanest, and there was no instructions in the box. I had to go online and look up the instructions for this to figure out all the functions and all that. So I think it possibly came to me with the lens a little dirty, so I cleaned it and it did improve it, but there's still a lot of CDs I have that won't play it. And my Cambridge Audio 540C, which is about 12 years old, it's a little sensitive too. There's CDs that there's tracks it won't play, but I think it's gotten worse over the years. Like I said, that thing's about 12 years old and it has thousands of hours of playtime on it. I mean, it's had thousands of CDs through it. And it's not perfect, but it's still better than this has been. And like I said, I've got two 20-year-old Sony DVD players that will play every CD I have without a glitch. And I've got two Sony Blu-ray players and two Panasonic Blu-ray players and a Samsung Blu-ray player that will all play 98% of my CDs. So, I mean, my CDs aren't garbage. There's a few of them that are a little bit rough, but like I said, I had problems with maybe a third to a half of my CDs. At some point, there was a glitch or a skip in it. So I don't know. Here's the question. Is this possibly a defective unit and that isn't normal for this? I don't know. If it is, if someone from APOS Audio is listening to this and you think that this isn't normal, that I have trouble with a lot of CDs, and if you want to send me another unit, I will be happy to review it. And if I don't have any problems with that, I'd be happy to do another video and let you all know that I have no issues. Or if someone from SMSL hears this video or watches this video and thinks that maybe there's something wrong with this unit, same thing. Send me another one, same unit or, you know, whatever, a different one, but from SMSL, I will be happy to review it. And if it is better at playing less than perfect CDs, I will be happy to let you know. Very possible that, you know, this unit just isn't operating the way it should. So besides from that, I love this player. It does everything. I've never used a CD player that does so much. I love the, you know, all aluminum enclosure on this. Really nice build quality. Nice display on it. Like I said, all the functions were a little confusing at first, but I picked up on it after a while and got used to it. The top load, I don't know if I'm crazy about that, but for, you know, various reasons, but I'm okay with it. And, but, you know, like I said, the only issue I had is it won't play all my CDs. So, once again, if you're from SMSL or from APOS that sells these, contact me if you think there may have been a problem with this unit, and I'd be happy to review another unit and, you know, find out if it was just this unit. But other than that, I love everything about this, and it is a great unit, so I'm hoping the issue with not being able to read less than perfect CDs is just a glitch with this personal unit, and I hope I have the opportunity in the future to find that out. So other than that, it's a great unit. Great SSD player, great SSD player with a built-in headphone amp, as long as you don't try to power something really power hungry like the Sasvara, and great asset transport. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. And we're up to almost 35,000 members at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. You're all welcome to join us over there. Once again, thanks for watching my video.